Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again in Prehistoric Kingdom. I have a few things to talk about before I talk about the build, but I promise to be quick. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, commenting on the previous Prehistoric Kingdom video, and for subscribing. We're up to 60 subscribers at the time of this recording, and that is so amazing. I'm so happy you're all joining me on this journey. Secondly, I'd like to mention that come Update 15, I'd like to try out a fresh challenge zoo, which is their franchise zoo mode if I'm correct. And I'd like to try my hand at creativity with a budget. Moving to a challenge zoo will also mean we get to see the other features this game has to offer, and I'm really excited for the next update coming in August. Let me know if you'd rather just see a new sandbox zoo, or if you'd also like to see a challenge zoo. Now, let's talk about our build today. We're working on the cave bear habitat for this one, and I had a bit of a rough start, not shown in this video. I've started recording this video 3 times. The first time was in a different area at the zoo, specifically the large hill area, which is why it's been changed from the past if you noticed it in the background at the start. I didn't like the way it was working out over there. It felt really overshadowed, even though that spot would have been perfect for the cave bear. I just couldn't get the hill to move and shape right for what I had in mind. The second time I started recording, OBS crashed and never told me. So whenever I checked it to make sure it was recording, it was showing everything fine. But when I stopped the recording, it completely crashed out. And when I checked the footage, I only had 6 minutes of footage. Thankfully, I wasn't far into the build on that one, only about 30 or so minutes. And I decided that the outcome of the build wasn't what I wanted either, so I was going to restart it anyways. This third time actually worked out. OBS worked great, the shape was what I was wanting, and the flow of the build was good. The whole thing took over 2 hours in total of recording time, sped up by the fact that I used the brush for the foliage this time around, which I actually had a comment on the previous video asking about my manual placement of foliage, and this video is a good example of my use of the brush. I placed manual foliage where I was aiming for something specific, but in the areas where I just needed dense forest, I used the brush. I haven't added any viewing locations to this habitat yet, but I will. I just forgot while I was recording. I plan on also going back and doing a bunch of fixes to existing habitats and placing in more features for guests in the future. If you'd like a video of that, maybe with an at-the-time voiced content, let me know. I'm not sure how much interest there would be in a little behind-the-scenes video. Back to the bears. When I first started planning this build, I wanted a small, chunky hill with a cave for the bears, but the terrain tool doesn't let me create overhangs or burrows, and I didn't want just a cave stuck out in the middle. So I started playing with the ideas of multi-level terrain, and hoping I could create a spot for the cave. But as I moved through the first 2 failed video attempts, this idea formed that the zoo wouldn't have had a hilly cave area that was in the Boreal forest zone or the temperate zone, and thus they made one. And so I tried to make the area look very man-made, and obvious that there was no natural area here. The water is pumped in a feed from the lake, filtered to maintain the bear's health, and the man-made cave is placed in a location that is easy for guests and park employees to view the animals and ensure their maintenance. The whole habitat is curated to short, coarse grasses that don't need much maintenance, and tall, weather-resistant trees that they don't have to cater to. I'd like to imagine that there's also hidden coolers and heaters in the exhibit that they use to ensure healthy hibernation cycles, and perhaps even that the exhibit animals are swapped out in the winter with an overwinter species. It was really hard to create the river between the 2 hills. The way the water system works means I can't shape the land area first and just add the water in after like Planet Zoo. So it ended up making the river sort of control the space it was in rather than the other way around. But I think it still turned out okay once I messed around with it a bit further on in the video. I also placed a bunch of dead trees and fallen logs and branches near the end of the river, but I didn't want to go too crazy, so it's just a few. The terrain at the front of the habitat by the path really gave me a headache, and I couldn't get rid of the jagged terrain look to save it. and ended up having to make a rock ridge, which I didn't want to use too much, but it needed to be done, or to have those jagged polygons just sitting there, or round it out and risk the bear being able to just walk up to the guests. And while I'm pretty sure these creatures won't breach their enclosure limits and try to escape, it sort of ruined some of the immersion, so I used rocks and a sheer terrain to maintain it. This time around, I separated the rock clusters I made by hand into separate groups, which made my life so much easier when I had to go back and make changes. I didn't have to try and make the changes without messing up other clusters. These clusters also helped me to shape and work ledges into the hillsides so that they weren't just a blob of a hill. Although I had imagined that the ravine for the river to be more narrow and have a fallen tree or hollow log between the two, but I ended up scrapping that idea as I moved through the shaping of the hills. The terrain painting tool was kind to me today. I didn't have as many issues as I normally do blending the different looks, and this exhibit uses the gravel, rock, and grasses of the Boreal forest section. I could have looked in Temperate 2 and Coastal for some other looks, but was pretty happy with the way it looks. That being said, I should look to see if there's another species with more coastal needs for an upcoming exhibit. I haven't used much of the coastal, and I'd like to. Again, we had more babies who spent so much time in the water I couldn't get too many good shots of them. And as a whole, these bears didn't do too much. They mostly wandered around roaring in the same spots. Sometimes they did move to other locations, so I don't think it was an issue of inaccessibility, but more that the AI may have been stuck in a loop. I haven't been having any gameplay degradation, but I'm wondering for how often some of the AI have just been stuck turning circles, if maybe there's too many in my zoo. Perhaps I've just been getting unlucky with the AI loops? I would think I'd see other issues happening than just AI not cooperating if I was overtaxing my zoo's limits. I'm playing the game at max everything, so I would assume there would be a slowdown if there was too much going on. I'll go visit older exhibits and see if there's any issues with animals that have existed longer, or if maybe as they spend more time tracking the enclosure, it fixes the looping. That being said, is anyone interested in a zoo tour in first-person mode? Let me know. All that aside, these guys were cute. I love the details worked into these creatures, the lip curls, the beautiful ears I just want to rub, and the adorable tails. The adults have very well done standing animation, and it makes me hope that they add in a tree toy in the future update that these guys can scratch their back against. It was a great joy recording this habitat, and I hope you all enjoyed it too. I'll leave you to listen to the tidbits Nigel has for you, and I'll see you all in the next one.
A cave bear's diet is far more vegetarian than its modern relatives, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous. Even giant pandas, with their cute and cuddly reputations, have exceptionally strong bites for eating bamboo. Now imagine a herbivorous bear that weighs as much as, if not more than, an adult polar bear. The cave bear belongs to the genus known as Ursus, alongside extant brown, black and polar bears. This same genus lends its name to Ursa Major, a constellation in the northern hemisphere. If you're ever stargazing and want to find Ursa Major, start by looking for the Big Dipper. Cave bear remains are mostly found in caves where they hibernated or even lived, hence the name. Unfortunately, these caves were also great homes for our ancestors, so they likely competed for real estate.